Hey everybody, it's Sunday night and I've been down here in the fish room working on a few tanks, getting some odds and ends done. So we're going to do a little mini update and just catch everybody up on what I've been doing tonight. Nothing major, but I have done some things, so here we go. My native tank is actually in the middle of a water change right now, and we're going to come back to this one. We're not going to do a before and after or anything like that, but I do want to show you how tannin stained the water is right now. It's kind of hard to tell when you're just looking in at the tank. You don't know how yellow, or you just don't know what things are supposed to look like color wise. But when you get down to where the tank is actually clear glass and you can look in there, and for example we'll be able to see this top of this piece of wood here fairly shortly as the water level lowers. And when you see that exposed above the water line through the clear glass, you'll realize just how brown that water actually is. So it's really tannin stained and really in need of a water change. So tonight it's going to get a big one. I'm not going to mess around with the filter or anything. In fact, I've already got the filter shut down so I can just let it go. And we're going to drain it down until at least some of this wood's exposed, at least a 50%, maybe even a little more than that tonight. The power head in the back will continue to run, so will the air stone. But my power head that I have right here, I don't know if you were aware that I had another power head in this tank. This one just gives me a little bit of surface agitation so that my two LED spotlights I have right here shining down into the tank give that nice shimmery, ripply effect of sort of sunlight on a rippling stream bed. So, get back to this tank, as I said, once the water level gets down a little bit lower. This is the tank that I worked on first. Sort of. This is the first tank I actually worked on. I did work on the plants in my Waterfall tank, but we'll get to that in a minute. As far as actual fish tanks go, this one is undergoing treatment for cyanobacteria and just the grunge that builds up in a tank after a while. A couple times a year I have a few tanks that need to get a treatment. No big deal, not really sweating it. But it went through 24 hours of treatment with the air stone and so on and so forth. Not going to get into a bunch of details about the treatment right now. I'm using ChemiClean. You do need to use an air stone when you're doing that. And then after 24 hours, you do a water change and your treatment is over. But the stuff's inexpensive enough that I don't mind doing a water change and then doing another treatment. I've got the air stone out and set up on my little stand right here, and I've got everything up and running. I'd rather do it twice in a row than do it once and not really get everything, because I do have a lot of vegetation in this tank. I got a lot of dead zones where the water circulation really can't get into all the nooks and crannies necessarily. And the way this product works is it does it by oxidation. So if you don't have good vigorous water flow and you don't have good vigorous gas exchange, it's a less effective process. So in tanks like this especially, I always like to give it a double whammy. Sometimes I'll even do it 3 times if it seems like it's necessary. And in this case, I don't think that's going to be the case. But I do have the Sun 304B filter, which moves a fair amount of water. And then I've got a reasonably small power head back there. That's only a 425 gallon per hour power head, which at the time seemed like a lot of water movement. But now that I've got a little bit of experience under my belt, I realized that in a 40-gallon tank, especially one this heavily planted, I could go at least twice that amount of water circulation in the back like that without really disturbing the fish too much at all. In fact, I don't really have enough circulation in this tank as it is, and maybe one of these days I will upgrade to a bigger power head. I've even thought about putting a second power head in here, but as of yet, I've only got the one power head and the filter moving the water around. So, not a big deal. Like I said, I do this once in a while, and then we'll get the tank straightened out over the next couple of days, and it'll be back to looking nice and pretty again. So the other tank that I did, or one of the other tanks that I did some work on, was my T-bar tank. Nothing really to speak of. I did accidentally touch my sailfin Pleco. It was in the Anubias here, and as I was going through plucking some yellowing leaves and some dead leaves out of there, just on a little bit of typical, plant maintenance, I grabbed a hold of something. It totally freaked me out. I yanked my hand out of the tank. Oh, look, you can see all that rustling around. I bet he's back under there now already. Yep, there he is. I can see his little face sticking out. So I grabbed a hold of him by accident, and it freaked me out. But he stayed there long enough to let me rub his forehead a little bit, so I went and got my camera and was able to get a couple of moments of video of me actually touching that sailfin Pleco, and then I deliberately sort of touched its body and, you know, put my hand around it to give it a little bit of, you know, the impression of scale, so you could really see the size of the fish. And I also wanted it to move. I wanted it to swim a little bit, and I finally got it to. So I'm actually looking at my angelfish here, and I'm just now noticing this lesion on the side of its mouth. So that is brand new. All the water changing and everything I did in here, I did not even notice that my angelfish here has what looks like some sort of sore or injury or something on the side of its mouth. Not really sure what's going on with that, but I'm going to definitely be keeping an eye on that. So in addition to the Pleco, I got a lot of stuff. I obviously missed some of the dead strands of Java fern, but I did get a lot of the dead vegetation out of here. I got a lot of that Pleco waste cleaned up off the bottom, and the tank was, you know, just kind of needed a little bit of a once-over. Nothing on the filter or anything like that, no big deal. You can see that Pleco in there rummaging around in the bushes. It's kind of funny looking. Look, now you can see his little nose sticking out again right there. Wonder if he'll let me stick my hand in the tank and touch him again. I'm not going to bother with that. I even said in the other video, for those of you who are concerned about the slime coat getting rubbed off if the fish gets touched and handled too much, that is a concern, and a legitimate one, but I'm not going to make a habit of it. My hands were freshly washed, and I just gave the fish a few little rubs and no big deal, so I'm not really worried about having done any damage to the fish's slime coat. But as I said in that video, I'm not going to make a habit of reaching in there and touching it. I've certainly touched enough fish over the years. The only novelty is that it's one in my tank that allows me to touch it, or allowed me to touch it. That was the novelty. Me touching a fish is not anything unusual at all. I've been catching fish since I was a little kid. So again, I'm not going to be in there, you know, rubbing this fish and petting it like it's some kind of, you know, furry pet that enjoys my affection or something like that. I really don't think that's the case. But I am really concerned about that. Did not like the look of that at all, and I can't tell whether it looks like some sort of disease or infection, or it looks like some sort of injury. So definitely going to have to be keeping my eye on that. Don't know what's going on with that, but that concerns me. We're not going to talk about my gourami tank at the moment. I will say that this is going to be a video in its own right, and that's why we're not going to talk about it tonight. I've been working on this tank, and it's getting ready to undergo its own thorough water change and cleaning and scrubbing out again and so on and so forth. You can see the glass needs to be scrubbed down. So that's going to be a video in its own right, and it's not going to be part of all of my tinkering around down here this evening. I'm doing more of the easy to do rapid fire water changes tonight. So next on the list was my 29 miscellaneous. Likewise, nothing really to talk about. I just did a simple water change. I did get in there finally and cut out the flower of the Anubias. That little green stalk you can see right there is actually new growth, and that is not flower. That is going to unfurl into a new leaf. So my Anubias in here is doing well, and that was about it. I did a filter change because it's a simple hang on the back filter, and why not? It's always easy to do while the water's draining. It's not like taking one of these canisters apart and lugging all the pieces in the other room and so on and so forth. The hang on the back filters are easy peasy. The other aspect is the filters have very small filtration pads, and therefore you do have to change them much more frequently than the large canister filters, but nonetheless I still don't change my canister filters often enough, and they get really, really dirty, and then they generate a lot of waste that goes right into my fish tank. So I probably should get more on that, but whatever. I'm not going to worry too much about that, especially right now, and especially in this video. So what else I did today was I finally started bringing my plants back in and stacking them up around my waterfall tank. Now they've taken a hit. They did get outside for a little while, and it was a cold day when I put them out there, and I had to spray them down with the soapy water and everything, and it was a cold day when I did it. So they didn't stay outside long, but they were outside long enough that they got brutalized a little bit, and then they sat on my kitchen floor, and they dried out a little too much, and so on and so forth. So This one here, this begonia was down here and stayed down here throughout the whole time, and that's why that one looks halfway decent. This one did not. This one went outside and is looking a little bit rough, but we do have some new growth on it, so the plant itself is fine. It's just probably the existing vegetation on there. You know, these leaves are probably not going to recover. They might, but they're probably not going to, and we're going to have to wait for some new growth to spring out on that one. I was able to bring my philodendron back in. Likewise, took a beating. This plant is also in an awkward position. It doesn't get a lot of light. You can see back here is very dim and poorly lit. And I had so much thick vegetation up front that it was really preventing any light from getting towards the back. And of course also being outside, being hit by the aphids, so on and so forth. That's taken kind of a beating. But I did bring it back in, and I did sort of tuck it over this way, so we've got some roots going down into here now, so we should get rooting and then new growth emerging from here. And I got a piece tucked in back here. I got this sticking out, and I got this piece. This is actually going to be rooting in down there. I don't really know if I want to do that or not yet. We can go ahead and turn that light on and we can see what that looks like. Oh, that was on. Forgot I turned that on earlier. So that's what that looks like, the difference between on and off. I know it doesn't look like much when I've got this mad crazy LED going on over our heads, but when I turn that one off, this one makes a big difference to how it shines into the tank. So I really like that. Look in that one corner. I also, while I was outside today, we had a little bit of a warm day, nothing major, but it was warm enough that I was able to scrounge around and dig up some more dead nettles. I got them in a fresh planter, fresh soil in there, and I've got them draped down around here. If you're familiar with the way the dead nettles grow, is they will send out these trailers across the ground, and every so often they will put out roots, and then that'll become another central point that'll put out trailers in a bunch of different directions, sort of almost like a spider web would grow, or a network. And what I did was I found several of them. I've traced them out as far as I could before they broke, and on these two right here in particular, I actually have root masses down. Again, not sure if I really want to do this, but you can see how this one's kind of sticking up. It goes down and then back up because the roots are down there. And I'm hoping with the roots getting moisture right here, I won't have to rely on the central root mass up there, which also doesn't get very much light. And if that's the core center of the plant and it's not getting a lot of light up there, I don't know how well it's going to do. So if we can get some rooting in going on down here where it gets access to water, I'll get some hanging growth. And then that will eventually get down to here where it will probably root in again. And then, of course, my goal eventually is to get something, you know, far enough out here that it'll, you know, cover that up a little bit. I know that doesn't look right. But that piece of broken, shiny, bright wood sticking up like that really just kind of bugs me. And there's not a lot I can do about it. I've tried draping stuff on it. I hung a piece of moss over top of it, but it basically looked like a moss wig that somebody put on it. This moss grew there naturally on that, and while that may look a little awkward to some people, it actually is really, I wish I could get more moisture on it so it would continue growing. You can see how it's kind of drying out. So anyway, I'm getting a little too distracted here talking about all this various stuff that's going on with the waterfall tank, because this is basically like a garden and a fish tank all in one, and then it has sort of a little secondary companion fish tank that goes with it that has crabs and everything else in it. Forgot to mention, I also got some nerite snails. You can see this rock is already cleaned off, this rock is halfway cleaned, and they are already making some progress on the corner glass there. So I got 3 nerites, and we're going to see how well they do. So, getting back to this tank, we're just now getting to where we can see some wood sticking out above the surface of the water, so I'm not going to drag this video out that much longer, but you can definitely see the difference between looking through to the back purple lining. That purple lining goes all the way to the bottom. It just gets that dark because there's so much tannins in the water that you just can't see towards the back of the tank. So we're getting there. I'm going to drain it down for several more inches. As I said, we're probably going to bring the water level down to, you know, somewhere down around here. So I've probably got another 20-25 minutes to kill of just draining water before I start filling it back up. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and say thanks for watching. In fact, we can go ahead and end it up with my purple spotted gudgeon tank. I just replaced the lights in this tank not long ago. But as you'll notice, when I've got that big bright LED on, you see how the fish is visible up in the left corner. That's not even under the light. If I turned the LED that's on the waterfall tank off, that you wouldn't see that fish at all. So a lot of that light is actually coming from bleed over from the waterfall tank, and it really changes the dynamics in this one in a way that I like. I think it's good. I enjoy the waterfall tank light coming into here. In fact, let's go ahead and turn these two off for a moment. I think it might spook the gudgeon a little bit. I'm going to turn the backlight's not even working, so not sure what's going on with that, because I just replaced the rear tube with a 2700K bulb, and that is not working at all at the moment, so I'm not really sure what's going on with there. So if you can kind of look through the glare and everything, you get a pretty good idea of how brightly lit the front of this tank is when there's no internal lighting going on. That gives you a little better idea, I guess, when you look at it glare free. So that's all coming from that LED that hangs up, you know, what are we, 7 or 8 feet away at this point, and yet it still puts out that much light, and it still puts out that beautiful light. You actually get to see a little bit of the colors on the fish a little. Alright everybody, now I'm going to call that the end of this video and say thanks for watching, and that was my Sunday night mini update. I'm going to get on with waiting for my 125 to drain, and as I already said, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and subscribe. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. And then don't forget, this one here is my purple spotted gudgeon tank. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.